This podcast production is done by Acute Media.
What's up, my good people? Welcome to Proactive. How can you say go and you're the one supposed to start the show? What was that?
No, I'm not supposed to start the show. It's you.
Today is your show.
It's our show.
Yeah, it's our show in general, but you today when you're kusema kwa hizi streets.
Okay, dear listeners, welcome to Proactive. It's been a minute and we are glad to be back. Hi Timo.
Hey, what's
welcome
up?
to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Okay.
Hey, hadi unafanya ni feel kama mgeni. Nice. Yeah.
So today we are taking our listeners
We're still on 6 piece. We haven't changed the
Yes.
narrative. We still need to finish these roles and responsibilities. Guys, we'll have a show. Please check out Yellow Tape. Also, there's something that we were talking about in reference to today's episode as we go about it in terms of policies making. And we were just talking about bei ya mafuta kuongezeka, for lack of a better way of putting it, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, hey, today we are doing well. Yani, you started the show and we've bigged up Yellow Tape this early. We usually do it at the end. I need to slow down, Let's focus on the show today.
All right.
Yeah, so we are on the 6th piece and we are looking at
The role of the MP.
yes.
That is after because we discussed the role of the MCA
yes.
on our last episode. So we'd advise you to go back and listen to the episode if you haven't listened to that episode.
It's important to note that we've moved now from county to the National Assembly. That's a big shift.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not that we've lost traction, but we know that in terms of levels of importance, it would be wiser for us to go in this direction before we move to the Senate and now to the governor.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, we're still on track, guys. Don't be worried. Yeah, so how do you want us to start this thing? You know, the biggest question for me is their roles. Like, I think there's a big confusion, you know, and in society, the problem right now is MPs think that they are only meant for CDFs and women reps are meant for just lobbying. Like, you know, that's their only work. So people don't really know the work of the MP. I was just telling someone the other day that how every time if you want to mess with an MP's mind in Kenya, just cut the budget for CDF and they will dance to your tune. That's how they're making things look. Like, the relevance of a member of parliament right now is being watered down to just having CDF and looking like you're making sense in society with CDF.
No. It actually goes beyond the CDF, dear listener, and we are here to demystify that.
And ndio hivyo sasa.
Yes.
So, tuanzie wapi?
We start from chapter 8 of the Constitution.
All right.
Chapter 8 of the Constitution establishes the legislature. So our members of parliament parliament is the legislature. The other word for legislature is parliament or August House. Anyway, yes, parliament is divided into two. We have the Senate and we have the National Assembly.
All right.
And when we talk about MP, a member of parliament can either be a member of National Assembly or the senator. And today we're going to discuss the role of the member of National Assembly, and we shall discuss the role of the senator next week. It's also important, dear listener, to note that we'll also be discussing the role of the woman representative. The woman representative is also a member of parliament, a member of the National Assembly. They actually sit in the National Assembly.
All right. Yes. So, Elsie, let me just ask, what qualifies someone to be a member of parliament, an MP?
An adult of sound mind, and as of the last elections, a member of parliament is required to also have the degree.
You've been on this one for a while, Mazi. You've been happy about it, you know.
Yeah, because, you know, they're actually making policies that affect our lives, decisions that affect our lives, decisions such as, you know, the price of fuel, decisions regarding the economy, regarding governance. We need people who are familiar with various disciplines so that they are also able to make laws that, you know, are in tandem with what we are facing, our current realities. Actually, it's interesting to note that actually both the Senate and the National Assembly, they are divided into committees. There are a number of committees.
Yeah.
So you'll find most of the time that the people who sit in the finance committee are people with a background in finance and economics. People who sit in the JLAC committee, that is the Justice and Legal Affairs committee, you find that those are people with the background in matters law, governance, political science, and all that. So it's really the medical background. If you have a doctor, you'll find that a doctor is a member of that committee.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't work out every time, but at least they have some knowledge based on how to go about things in terms of management. I think we should narrow down even what kind of degrees people are getting. I mean, that's watering down education for someone, but surely when it comes to matters policy making, and I think some of the issues that I have with the current crop of members of parliament is some of them haven't even gone through basic policies of policy making, like being educated on such things, like legal processes for some things. You just get represented, and now at least there's that qualification that you have to have a degree, but then there's a need for some more specialization when it comes to these things, and it's not just from government in itself asking of these things, but us as the people requiring of these things from these members of parliament when they come in. Because I don't, when you come to the National Assembly, if you do not have any ounce of legal knowledge, it becomes a bit harder for you.
Yeah.
That's when sasa CDF looks like your only way of life. Like you can't live without CDF. And you end up affecting people. It's good that now tutakuwa na watu watahave kukuwa na degrees.
Yeah, but I think even the current crop of members of parliament are all with degrees. Yeah, even the governors.
Hatutasema venye zilichukuliwa, kuna zenye
MCs
tunajua zilitoka India, kuna zenye hata hatujuagi zilitoka wapi, unajua. But yeah, ideally for me, I think there is that need for specifying or taking them through a whole process where they learn about policy making.
Yeah, I think you've discussed this before.
Yes.
Because especially immediately after they've been elected into office, then they need to go through some kind of governance course or something, just a short course, just to remind them.
Exactly.
This is what is expected of you. This is how you're supposed to deal with such and such an issue. Yes. So we start with the composition of parliament.
Definitely.
That is the composition of the National Assembly. And I think this is important because this is one of the proposed amendments. This is one of the areas that was likely to be affected by the proposed amendments by the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill of 2020, which is the official name for reggae, or also known as BBI. Yes, so the National Assembly, under Article 97 of the Constitution, comprises of 290 members, each elected by the registered voters of single-member constituencies. So presently, Kenya has 290 constituencies, and each constituency is represented by a member of parliament. Then 47 women, each elected by the registered voters of the counties, each county constituting a single-member constituency. Then 12 members nominated by parliamentary political parties according to their proportion to the members of the National Assembly in accordance with Article 90 to represent special interests including the youth, persons with disabilities and workers, and the speaker who's an ex-officio member. Yes.
All right. I mean, there's an article I wanted to quote. That's what I was looking for. It was on the Standard. I can't remember when it was. But one, his name is Elias Mokua. It was on May 1st, 2017. This is what he had to say. MPs are probably the most persecuted lot in Kenya by voters for very wrong reasons. But I do not mind seeing these MPs shed tears. Nor do I mind most of the voters wallowing in poverty and underdevelopment even when they deserve better. It is fine because we seem happy lamenting, apportioning blame, and passing civic responsibility to others. Then he goes on and says, let me explain why I hold this seemingly sadistic position. First, MPs are the architects of their own persecutions. As we read, and are unfortunately rarely minded by the few who care about the value of social systems in development, the mandate of MPs is very clear: represent, legislate, and oversight. MPs are people's representatives, and so they have the obligation to voice the interest of their constituencies. It's a really interesting article that I think people should go. But those were the biggest pillars that I came up with when I was thinking about the roles of the MPs. And that's why even for me, CDF shouldn't be one of those things. Those people make you even knock on their doors looking for CDF, telling you on when that the days that you're supposed to come for CDF.
I see.
Kwani hatuna structures tunaweza kaeka zikuwe identifiable na ziende tu. Like there's no system that can just be automatically be done. We really have to wait until we go knocking on their doors begging for them. They make us look like we are the ones who really need them, and they're the ones who need us.
Because they are working for us?
Si ndio tuliwapatia
Because
kazi.
they are exercising power that has been donated by we, the people of Kenya.
Exactly.
Yes.
Why should I keep knocking on someone's door asking for CDF?
Bursary.
Kila saa bursary allocation. Akitengeneza class moja na tutangazia hapo ameandika jina yake.
But they actually own these projects with their names.
With their names. Shed ya pikipiki.
Yeah, donated by Honorable Elsie. You know, I call it Nyasembo because I'm from Asembo. Nyasembo project. Really? And yet it's been funded by county, not really the county, but you know, the taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's not their money.
It's not their money. Actually, hapo ndio sasa taxes zinaendanga by the way. By the way.
Good conversation. Okay, guys. When we've agreed today, we are just going to advertise Yellow Tape for the whole time.
No.
But then again, I mean, so for me, it was pretty clear when I was coming to do this episode to help people understand this part when I said represent, legislate, and oversight, and what it entails and what it's all about, so that it can be easier for them when they think about it, when they're choosing their members of parliament come next year, August 9th. We're doing it on a Tuesday, right?
Yeah, it has to be the second Tuesday of August.
Yeah.
Second Tuesday of August after every 5 years is provided for by the Constitution.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure, if I'm not wrong, it's August 9th. So let's talk about representation. What do they really mean?
Oversight and legislation.
What do they really mean when they say represent?
Represent is basically what it is. They're supposed to... Your member of parliament, for example, Timo, represents the people of Embakasi constituency. Embakasi East.
Nilihama.
Oh, Ulihama. So you have a new MP. Who do you know your MP where you live now?
Not yet.
See that.
He was just being voted the other day, so I haven't even gotten
to know. You guys had a by-election?
We are the ones in Kiamba.
Oh, there was a Okay, let me not display my my ignorance.
You're even worse than I am. So by the time I was moving into Kiamba constituency, that's when they were voting for him. And so that process of moving is when there was a whole lot of trucks moving around, doing the whole dance, you know, Jubilee coming in and threatening people, UDA coming and acting like they're the best in the market, you know, all that madness that was going on during that time. So yeah, but let's talk. Okay, fine.
They represent you in terms of everything, from preparation of the budget, approval of the budget, you know, even in terms of legislation. They literally represent what the people of Embakasi East, what the people of Embakasi Central, what the people of Kiamba, what the people of which other constituency do we know? London. I think there's a constituency called
London is a ward in Nakuru.
Oh, it's a ward.
It's just a ward.
Apologies.
Let's do this one. There's Nyali.
Nyali. Yes. Yeah.
Moha.
I like the MP.
Yeah. So yes, those are some of them that we can definitely touch on. So representation comes in all aspects, and it's really important that we don't miss out on such, because I find it hard at times for people just to let it go and think that there's someone else who's supposed to be doing that job. Well, when it comes to stuff to do with lobbying and even asking for going to figure out if this budget will touch on their people, they're the ones who should be the ones representing you there and asking for all these things. I don't know if I have missed out on anything majorly when it comes to representation, because I think for them they are the voice as much as the rest of the guys would be probably working. I think the major one for me is that they are the voice of the people when it comes to the ground.
Yeah.
What was the other thing I said? Nimesema vitu mingi.
Oversight, representation,
yes,
and legislation.
So let's talk about oversight before we go to legislation. You know, legislation is the biggest one upper. So I'm trying to clear on these other small ones before we start talking about legislation, because that's a whole story in itself. So what would be nitaitaje? Tuite tu role, because it's still back on role. What do they mean when they say oversight? What majorly is oversight? Do they now look at the projects being done?
They oversight the government, they oversight the cabinet.
Oh, so oversight is a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a lot of things also.
Oversight for us is
overseeing implementing.
It's oversight for us the issue that was happening just the other day when someone's security detail had to be removed and then they had to ask questions.
Oh yes, they had summoned the cabinet minister to explain the withdrawal of security forces. Actually, that's oversight. They oversee everything.
So these committees can also work in terms of oversight. Does it wholly represent, like, is it everyone who then will stand and ask these questions, or it's only left for a few people?
No, it depends on how the parliament decides to deal with it. How the house decides to deal with it.
Yeah.
There are some issues that they'd rather have all the 200 and actually in total I think there are 300 and something members. I think we have to calculate that 290 plus 47 plus 12 plus the speaker. So it depends on how the speaker decides to handle it. There are matters that will bring them all together to discuss the issue all together, but there are matters that are left for the specific committees.
Oh, this is
so for example, if it's an educational matter, if it's CBC for example, the committee that handles matters to do with education shall deal with it, shall discuss, shall make some decisions. And if it's a very, very important decision that affects, the country, then they will forward their decision now to the floor of the parliament that is comprising of all the members. Then they will all have to approve of it in one way or another.
This is what we usually see most of the times when the media brings out the floor sessions. Majorly they focus on stuff that has national interest, and most members of parliament will be represented. Why is it that we don't get to see when these oversight sessions are being done in the committee stage? Is it that we don't request for this footage? Is it there, or it's
I think their discussions are private.
Should they be private though?
No, not really, but I don't think actually the committees meet pretty much every other day, especially the finance committee. I think it's one committee that's very vibrant, and I'm sure it's a committee that has also even had to answer with regard to the recent debate about the fuel prices. So their sessions cannot always be televised or made public. They can't always, unless they are making a decision pertaining to an important issue that requires public participation, that requires the participation of stakeholders.
Yeah, I think about it. I've thought about it, and I've seen at times they're also still at that brainstorming session, but probably they will still bring the report back to the house.
Yes.
So we will be able to...
That is part of now legislation.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they're coming up with the legislation.
Are those Kenya Gazettes still downloadable? I don't even...
Yeah, Kenya Gazette is downloadable.
So anytime they make something new...
Yeah, but I think reading Kenya Gazette is quite...
tedious.
Yeah, like... I don't tell you not to do it, but just don't. A lot of things goes into the Kenya Gazette, including matters to do with succession, including matters to do with, land has been bought, or, title to land, so-and-so wants to inherit from so-and-so's, estate. A lot of stuff
but
goes into Kenya
at the
Gazette,
end of the day, maybe this is something then that needs to be done by someone. I don't know who. I'll ask the lobbyist groups if they are working on this, but it's an idea in itself. I mean, the Kenya Gazette is tedious to go about, but we can get a summary of what has been happening. You can get weekly updates.
Or you can follow them via the website. National Assembly website, also the Senators' website. You can always follow their proceedings. What are the motions? When are they meeting? What are they meeting to discuss? Yeah, you can always follow it via their website, and also get the Hansard just to check the proceedings of that day, because the Hansard actually records so and so say this, so and so say that regarding this issue.
All right. I think we've covered representation and oversight in a well manner. Let's talk about legislation now. Let me tell you what the commentary by Elias says. He says, the work of the MP is to rationally debate and ensure just laws are implemented by the executive and the judiciary. Thirdly, it is the work of the MPs to oversight the executive and the judiciary, and that is why Parliament has several committees that scrutinize government functioning for transparency and accountability.
Yeah, allow me to interject. I think when we were introducing the Constitution of Kenya, that is one of our episodes last year, I think I may have mentioned something about separation of powers, that one of the characteristics of our Constitution is separation of powers. Actually, basic structure doctrine, one of the core values, one of the core elements of our Constitution is the separation of powers. But the Constitution has also designed the institutions of government to work in such a way as they check and balance each other, that they oversight each other, that they have to work hand in hand. And one of the ways in which now the legislature works with the other, and of course that's Parliament, the National Assembly, and of course the Senate, but yeah, Parliament. One of the ways in which Parliament works with the other organs of government now is through oversight, through approval. For example, I think they had to approve of the Chief Justice, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
It had to be after it went through the JSC.
Yes, it went through the JSC. JSC forwarded a name to the president. President approved of the name. And then the name was forwarded to Parliament for approval.
Yes.
Yes. So as you can see, from JSC, an independent body, it was forwarded to the executive. The executive forwarded it to the legislature. Yes, and the legislature now had to approve who's going to head the judiciary. That is how these institutions of government, we used to call them the three arms of the government. So this is how these arms of the government work hand in hand.
All right.
Yes.
I think we've made it clear what their work is. Because this is where my biggest question now will come when it comes to members of Parliament. This is what I'm going to be quoting this article because it was one of the highlights when I was just going about my business.
But Timo, I think it's also important that we've discussed the role, the three roles, the main, that is the representation, oversight and legislation. And I think it's the same as highlighted under Article 95 of the Constitution that states that the National Assembly represents the people of the constituencies and the special interests in the National Assembly. So we've talked about representation. Then it deliberates and resolves issues of concern to the people. That is the second role. Deliberating and resolving issues of concern. Recently, I think there was an MP, I can't remember the MP for which constituency, who had proposed a motion in Parliament that Parliament adjourns every other motion that it was to discuss, I think, last week, and that they discussed the rising cost of living, because that was an emerging issue. Yeah, that was an emerging issue last week. It still is an emerging issue right now. And that is one of the ways in now which they deliberate and resolve issues of concern to the people.
Very true.
That is the National Assembly. Third, it enacts legislation in accordance with Part 4 of the chapter. And then the National Assembly determines the allocation of national revenue between the levels of government. Remember, dear listener, last year we discussed at length the debate about the division of revenue between the national government and the county government.
Exactly.
So you can go back and listen to that episode whereby we also discussed the role of the National Assembly when it comes to approval of the division of revenue as agreed on by the Senate. So from the Senate, it goes to the National Assembly. So the National Assembly has a role to play with regard to that. Then it also appropriates funds for expenditure by the national government and other national state organs. So expenditure by the national government is also appropriated by the legislature. So yeah, basically the funds that even go into building these roads, into the schools, whatever the national government is doing, those funds have to be up. And of course, it's specifically the finance committee.
Yes, the finance committee.
Yes. Then it also exercises oversight over national revenue and its expenditure. So, the whole budget, every time when it's the end of June, July, I think the end of our financial year is 30th of June. So between 30th of June and 1st of July, that is when, again, the finance committee is very, very active because they have to approve of the budget as proposed by the Minister for Finance, another way in which the different arms of government are working together.
All right.
Yes. And then it exercises, I think we've discussed, Then finally, the National Assembly reviews the conduct in office of the President, the Deputy President, and other state officers and initiates the process of removing them from office. So as we are speaking currently, there's a motion in the Senate to censure the cabinet secretaries for energy and petroleum for failure to show up when they were summoned to answer to issues which are of concern to the people.
Yeah.
Yes, but then that's happening in the Senate, not in the National Assembly. However, the National Assembly still has power to do that.
Yeah.
We saw the National Assembly also summoning the Cabinet Secretary for Interior to answer, to respond to another issue that was of concern, that is the withdrawal of security from the Deputy President. And a lot of information was revealed back then. So that's one of the ways, that's another role of the National Assembly. Then exercising oversight of state organs. So the state organs will be the ministries, for example.
Yes,
and of course state corporations sometimes. And then the National Assembly approves declarations of war and extensions of state of emergency. So
yeah,
thank goodness we are not there yet.
I mean, look at your MP and tell me if he can do all these things. There's even been that whole silent murmurs of trying to now oust the deputy president in terms of his conduct, making it look like he's out of conduct. But let me now. Can I go back to what I wanted to ask?
Yeah. Now you can go. I think we've discussed the role at length. Yes.
So, research by Jesuit Hakimani Center shows that the percentage of voters who know the functions of MPs is negligible. Conversely, there is no evidence to show that MPs themselves have worked hard to educate their constituencies on what the role of an MP constitutes. For this reason, most voters erroneously believe that the main work of an MP is first to enrich themselves, since voters believe MPs are greedy and self-seeking, and secondly, to develop our constituency. And the CDF fund reinforces this misadvised notion. What's our main problem? Shida yetu ni gani? Because ameisema nikajisikia like one of the people. Like way back, that was me.
It's ignorance.
Can we solely base it on ignorance?
It's ignorance. We don't bother to actually find out the role of the MP. But then our MPs also ride on that ignorance to make it look like, as you said, we depend on them and their masses. We depend on the CDF and we get the CDF at their masses. They ride on that ignorance. But that's why we are here. We are doing this show. We are educating our listeners so that they know more beyond, the CDF. The MP actually has a role that is even separate and independent from the CDF. The CDF is actually governed. I think there's a CDF Act that even states that each constituency should have a committee to handle the CDF funds and to even decide how the CDF funds are to be appropriated.
That's very true. But nani alituroga to the point that we think the first work of an MP is to enrich themselves, surely.
Seti tumerogwa. It's unfortunately the history of Kenya. Sikurogwa. It's because a certain MP somewhere, and actually a number of MPs in different constituencies, they got into office, they became rich, they wakajenga nyumba, wakaenda Karen, they've done a lot. That's when there's some kind of change in lifestyle, that you notice when one becomes an MP.
A full MP,
and that's why
represent Asembo na akona nyumba Nyari.
Yeah, it happens.
Akisema ni ofisi yake akikuja Nairobi.
It happens. Your MPs live here in Nairobi, actually.
How many days do you think an MP should be living in Nairobi?
I don't know. Some of them actually just go
leave alone the ones that represent Nairobi.
The ones that represent Nairobi of course have to be here.
Yes.
But some of you from Marsabit, from Turkana, your MPs are here in Nairobi. Their children are studying in Nairobi. They're not studying in those schools.
So they do
that
not even
they're
understand.
supposed to, ensure are in good condition and good and perfect condition for, your children. Yeah, their children are actually studying here in Nairobi, so
That's why
Karada.
for them a class renovation looks like the biggest improvement that they've given the people. What is the problem with us? Is it that we just don't?
The problem is not us, Timo. I am strongly convinced it's because of the behavior of past MPs. I don't say that the MPs we have currently are any exception to the general rule. It's just that I've not been following up on their lives. But we have seen MPs again enriching themselves, and we've seen an unexplainable change in lifestyle. Like, in fact, some MPs have even been implicated in some corruption cases in the past.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's just the behavior of the people who held the office in the past that, probably influenced Kenyans to think that, the role of an MP is to enrich himself or herself, and that, we are dependent on their masses so that we can benefit from the CDF. Yet we have a right to benefit from the CDF, only that now their offices or the committee that is established by the MPs, there's a way in which they have to decide about appropriation of and how to spend the CDF funds in a way that ensures development within the constituency, but at the same time ensuring that a number of people are also getting educated, that covers children in high schools and in universities. Yeah,
I think one of the things, and I think that is something we should do next year, even when they come to us for their votes, we should definitely ask them what is their role. You'd see how a lot of them would be faltering in that answer. Even now, if you stood and asked an MP what their role is, they wouldn't quote word for word what you said their role was, to be honest. And I think that's us. The reason why I asked that problem, in as much as ilianza kitambo, ignorance is not an excuse. We needed to go back and inform ourselves. Like, we could see the issues that were arising. We could see the current the trend in behavior from every MP that we picked, every MP that we re-elect, and we can see for sure. But the problem is also that we've gotten to a point where this omba looks like it's a savior thing. I remember back in, not the 2013 one, the other one, the previous election. I remember when Sonko was coming into power, and the conversation on the streets, you could hear Sonko comes to the hood, gives the women a goat to go and chinja, gives you 1,000 bob so people can do something with it on that day, and everyone was like, heri Sonko mwenye anakujaga anatupatia sai shida yangu ya sai. Why do we focus a lot on shida ya sai per se, like in quotes? Because we only think
I
about
think it's
the
just
problem
human
there.
nature.
Yeah.
It's just the human nature. It's not really a Kenyan issue that we think about the issues we are facing at a particular time. For example, next year will be the election year, and then maybe there might be a hike in the price of flour, maize flour. I think it happened in Embakasi Stienyu. So when there was a hike in the price of maize flour, I remember one of the aspirants back then, I think the Jubilee aspirant, was donating flour. I think packets of flour. I think there was also a shortage of flour at the time.
Yes.
There was something. So the Kenyans back then, they thought that thought process was influenced by the problem that was present at the time, and an MP aspirant decided to run with
this one. We'll mention even in the next episode. To take
advantage of that.
We'll mention in the next episode the women rep. I know a women rep who now is giving out sijui washing machines and sijui sanitary towels with her face on the sanitary towel. Surely.
Really?
Aye.
Anyway, by then, dear listeners, even as we speak about the MPs, we have female MPs. We have people who are actually MPs as women. I have seen the female MPs in a way. There's some kind of attitude and some kind of silent beef between the women MPs, the female MPs, and the people who've been elected as women representatives, because they, I actually fought a man to become
here. And
so we have MPs who are both male and female, but we also have the women representatives. As you remember, I read based on Article 97, the membership of the National Assembly. We have the women representatives who are also the members of Parliament. And because they are members of the National Assembly, their role also their role falls within the scope of Article 95.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we have read out just 2 minutes ago.
Just a
Yes, so women representatives also have a role to play with regard to legislation, oversight, and representation. So if your MP is not reachable, you can try your woman representative. The woman representative represents the whole county, but in the National Assembly.
Yes.
So you can still ask them questions pertaining to what is being discussed, whatever is on the floor of the National Assembly. Any change in law you'd like them to make or to propose, you have them for that. They can represent your views with regard to, for example, if it's a bill to do with abortion, so there's no abortion bill, but assuming if there's an abortion bill and you would like your views to be heard, or you'd like her to vote in a certain way, or a number of you from the constituency would like her to vote in a certain way because she's representing your constituency, feel free, your county, feel free to reach out to her, just as you may reach out to your MP, the one representing your constituency.
Na kama milango zao hawajasema ziko open, zifungueni na fujo. We have to, because they're our representatives.
It is however noteworthy that the role of the woman representative, other than of course the roles within the National Assembly, they also have other roles. Perhaps you can discuss that on the next show. I think it's yes.
Yeah, we have a lot to also mention, because I will ask that question: can a man be a woman representative?
Of course not.
We will see the roles and the qualifications and see if a man can do it.
Yeah, last time it's interesting because last year 2017, when actually during the election year, that's when you also get to see these data research institutes or data collection institutes coming to I think there's one called Ipsos that they come to tell us who's the most popular amongst people based on their research. And I remember when it came to women representative for Nairobi, a number of women had also said that they would elect Maina Kageni. Yes.
Let's not go into the next episode. We cannot ask questions unless we begin by informing ourselves. The functions of each office we are electing candidates into, we must start finding out what their roles are.
Mm-hmm.
We have an election coming up.
Next year, 9th of August, 2022.
We've already seen people standing out and saying that they would vie for these seats.
Yeah, people are declaring interest.
Already they're declaring interest. Good people, the big question you need to ask them, what are their roles? Make it more concerning that you would learn about the roles of a member of parliament before you even ask them.
Mm-hmm.
We have tried to narrow it down and say that it's oversight.
Representation, oversight, legislation.
But there is more to it. Do you trust your member of parliament to declare a state of emergency? Do you trust your member of parliament to say that a president is not of good conduct and we need to remove him from office?
That's a very important role. This takes me back to the US, whereby they tried to impeach President Trump twice for misconduct, for what they perceived to be misconduct. It was the Congress that will do this. Now, the Congress in the US is the National Assembly in Kenya.
Yes. Yeah.
So our MPs pretty much have the same role as the members of Congress, who are even willing to impeach a president who had already been defeated in an election.
Even after he's gone home.
Yeah.
That is how I end for me. There's a lot more that we can start talking about, because when it comes to the policy making, we can start talking about the sessions that they have to go through. Do you trust your member of parliament to go through all that? Do you find him qualified, or do you just look at him as someone who will give you CDF when you go knocking on his door? Is it the work that he is supposed to do? Is CDF really what should represent or should dictate who a member of parliament is? Those are my final words. What do you have to say, Elsie?
Dear listener, I think it's also important that you note that in as much as you will elect your MP to represent you, you have to know and understand that the MP from Nyali, I don't live in Nyali, I don't live in Mombasa, but the MP from Nyali, the MP from somewhere in Kilifi, the MP from somewhere in Garissa, even they will affect me, who is not their constituent. I think if I may call myself a constituent, whatever they do in the National Assembly will not just affect you, will also affect other people. So be mindful of the person you elect, because I know when I elect my MP, a policy that he may initiate in parliament, maybe some kind of legislation or whatever decision he might make collectively with the other MPs will have the same effect on me as it will have on you, dear listener. So make sure you elect competent people come 9th of August 2022. Competent not just for you and for your constituents, but also remember the rest of Kenya, because these decisions, they make these decisions all together.
Tumemaliza.
It's been amazing. See you next time. We'll be discussing woman representative and maybe get a bit into the Senate. We'll decide. We are expecting feedback. Please do share your feedback. Reach out to us via acute with a Q on Twitter. We are also on Instagram. Yes, Timo, are we on Instagram?
What do you mean? We've been on Instagram for a while.
Proactive. Proactive is on Instagram?
Yes,
Proactive is on Instagram. So feel free to reach out, give us your feedback, maybe make your comments and suggestions on how maybe what you think we ought to do better as the hosts of the show. Thank you.